Hey everybody, it's Mike Matranga with M6 Global Defense Group. I wanted to get on here and have a quick conversation with you and just share some information. Our students and our staff deserve better, and I think that the problem is that in regards to school security and safety, the general public just doesn't know how a lot of this stuff works. I'm going to give you a couple of situations that I personally experienced and information that I think you as a parent or even as an educator should know about your well-being. I'm going to give you a situation that I dealt with where I realized and I learned that the general public just doesn't know what they don't know. We commonly see after every tragic situation, people are asking questions of why does this continue to keep happening? How do we resolve this? Of course, politicians usually have knee-jerk reactions and they buy more products, or they think that adding more officers on every campus is going to make a difference. And quite frankly, I'm not saying that those things don't. I'm saying that they're part of the solution. This is a holistic solution, and I think that the majority of the United States, they're slowly making some progress, but we're not quite there yet, because the fact of the matter is that we can't make real change until we start getting real information and having real conversations. And what I mean by that is in 2020-ish, I was the director of security at a local school district here in Texas. We were award-winning for our proactive methodologies of identifying behaviors and then intervening before they became a crisis. And so I recall one time I got a call from our administrator at one of our high school campuses stating that one of our students was in custody for threatening to stab a teacher. And myself and our lieutenant for the SRO program showed up, and me having experience with the Secret Service and behavioral threat assessment, I went in, and the child, because he was a child, 17-year-old kid, was extremely erratic, very emotional, very argumentative, but also very threatening. And he told the SRO lieutenant, "Hey, just take your gun out and kill me. I just want to die." And so at that point, I had everybody leave the room. We gave him some space to de-escalate and calm down, stopped asking him questions. And what I did was I started pulling up his disciplinary record in the Student Information System, SIS. And so for us at the time, we had a system called Skyward. Having an experience in behavioral threat and patterns of behavior with the Secret Service and understanding patterns of behavior usually lead to identifying what someone's intent and motives are. I figured, hey, let's start digging into data and let's see if there's something there that sticks out. And so what I did was, as he was, de-escalating, I started looking at his discipline. And what I started to see was a pattern of not only his behavior, but a pattern of data entry that seemed to be odd to me. What I found was that he had 16 disciplinary action notations in his file, and of those 16, 11 of them were assaultive behavior. But to the layman, what you didn't see, and this is one of the biggest kept secrets in education, is that when I found that he had 16 disciplinary actions, they were all coded at the time, and I don't know, it could be different now, but at the time it was called an 021 code. An 021 code is a code of conduct violation, okay? And so if you're just scrolling through and you're looking at this, you just see there's code of conduct violations. You don't understand, and you haven't been able to read, what the actual incident involved. And so you think it could be anything from being late to class to using a curse word, or in this case, the secret is that of the 16, 11 of them were assaultive behavior, where he had actually physically assaulted someone. One incident, he had stabbed someone with a pencil. Now he's threatening to stab a teacher. Another incident, he had threatened the assistant principal to kill him. A behavioral threat assessment was never done. But my point is that the big secret is that the school continued to label it as an 021 code of conduct violation. And people say, well, then they should be held accountable for that. Well, let me explain to you why they're not. or why they do that, because I don't really fault them. So in all 50 states, if a school is labeled a persistently dangerous school and they report all of their behaviors or these violent acts like assaultive behavior, sexual assaults, you name it, that has to be reported to the state. Well, in that SIS system, when it's reported to the state as an assault, after you have X amount of assaultive behaviors, then you become and could become labeled a persistently dangerous school. Where we have a problem is that when schools accurately report, they're then held accountable, and that accountability is often tied to future funding. And so my point is that there's no incentive for them to report accurately because they know that they're going to be labeled, and then the funding may be held. And then secondarily, how that funding is held is that once you've been given that label according to the state, the student or the parent can then choose to go to any other public school and not have to live in that district or in that region or zone because they're labeled a persistently dangerous school. My point is that I am willing to bet that in most schools, at least in the state of Texas and in America, that the data is wrong. We can't actively engage and intervene in crisis behavior with someone on a pathway to violence if the behavior is not being reported accurately and if we're not being honest. The problem is that we as people, but also our politicians, need to understand that there has to be something done about this rule, because it's what it's doing is it's stifling the administrators and the schools' ability to honestly report on what's happening, because they're afraid that they're going to lose funding, they're going to lose attendance, kids are going to go to an opposing district, which causes eventually fiduciary loss. And so it's just like a business, and this is how I attribute it, is that if you have a business and you've got terrible reviews on the Better Business Bureau, no one's going to want to do business with you. School districts are brands. When young American couples who have young families choose to move to an area, one of the first things that they look at if their kids go to public schools and even private schools is what's the rating of the school? How safe are they? What's the academic rating? What's the population? Depending upon who you are, it's what's the gender makeup, what's the ethnicity. All of these statistics and factors come to play when people choose to live in a community. If a school district is labeled a persistently dangerous school, it affects their brand. No one's going to want to go to that school district. Fast forward, here's another true story. After the very tragic Uvalde shooting at Robb Elementary, 2022, prior to my testimony before the Texas Senate, I was called in to a senator's office who oversaw education in the state of Texas. And this is the same individual who I had established a relationship with. In 2018, after the Santa Fe shooting, I was called and I testified and helped provide guidance on how to write Senate Bill 11, Senate Bill 435. And so I was a common person that the Senate leaned on for this particular type of advice. And so after Uvalde, I was called in to have a conversation with this guy and his chief of staff. And I remember him asking me, hey, Mike, how do we stop this? And I said, you know the answers. I've been saying this for the last 4 years. We are continuing to allocate resources to more law enforcement presence, more technical gadgets that haven't been proven that don't reduce response time, and those are things that are being funded at record rates. But yet the behavioral stuff, the things that over the last 30 years we've done enough research on, at the United States Secret Service and the FBI's behavioral unit have said that if we intervene early, we identify patterns of behavior, and then we get that person off the pathway to violence, that's how we make serious change. It's not enough to just be able to reduce response time. The goal is to stop the person from wanting to commit the violence in the first place. And I was very frustrated. I said, I've been saying this, multiple other professionals have been saying this. You continue to do what you feel is going to be politically advantageous, and that's appeal to the voter, especially the conservative voter, who is going to like the idea of let's add more metal detectors, let's add, more police officers. But that still doesn't address the root cause and the need and the want for this person to commit the act of violence. There's always leakage there. We got to get better at identifying it. We got to get better at managing it. We got to get better at providing the resources to our students and our staff. And what I told them is I said, everything that you need to know about the person who's going to commit the next act of violence, it's going to take some investigative, rolling up your sleeves and getting your elbows dirty, because everything you need to know about that person already exists. And he says, well, what do you mean? I'm not understanding it. I said, you have PEEMS. And this person said, well, what's PEEMS? This is a person that's responsible for the safety of our children in our educational facilities in the state of Texas. And I had to explain to this person, Public Education Information Management System. It's the state's database that schools are required to report these incidents and behaviors to. He didn't know what it was. And I said, and even further, digging deeper, you have to go at the local level and you have to dig through the student information systems to be able to read the narratives on the O21s, the code of conduct violations, so that you could see that these are not code of conducts. These are actually assaultive behaviors that these kids are participating in, but we have taken away the will of the administrators and the educators to want to report accurately because you penalize them. And I said, if you want to write an impactful bill, create a database where they can accurately report. You have forensic, behavioralists processing that data to see these patterns of behavior. I don't care if you're white, black, male, female, gay, straight, it doesn't matter. Behaviors don't lie. They don't lie. Patterns of behavior will appear in this database. The problem is that from the school district, that the SIS system, when they're coded as an O21 code of conduct, it does not fall into the same category as an assaultive behavior. So therefore, all of these assaultive behaviors and all of these things that we would call leakage are never reported because they're being concealed. And it's not the fault of the education professionals. It's the fault of the system. And our politicians know this, and they have to fix it. We can throw as many officers at a problem or at a school all day long, but unless they're right there when the kid decides to conduct the violence, they're just responding to an issue. They're not preventing anything. And so my point is that I was really conflicted on whether I wanted to share this with people, but at the end of the day, I am tired of seeing people in public places, in schools, in universities, being murdered and maimed and being forever traumatized because everyone is afraid to speak the truth. This is the absolute truth. Our educators know it. It's no fault of their own. We have to give them what they need to report accurately. It's trash in, trash out. You have to have accurate information. And so I wanted to share this with you. I appreciate everything. Thank you all for everything you do. Educators, my wife's an educator, my daughter's about to be an educator, lots of friends that are educators. We have a duty to our educators who are teaching the future of America, not just to protect our kids, but to protect them also. They can't effectively teach when they're not in a safe environment, when they don't feel supported by their administration, or better yet, by their local, state, and federal government. Again, thank you to everybody. If you guys need any assistance, your school district, your corporation, your country, feel free to reach out to us at m6globaldefense.com or info@m6globaldefense.com. Take care.